Hello everybody, welcome to Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel and drop a like on this video, and check us out over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you'd like to enjoy these as audio-only experiences. But with that said, let's get into these takes. From D-Lo's Strongest Soldier, Bronny will go down as the best player from this draft. He's only gotten better with time, and his mix of athleticism, shooting, and good defense at his size are traits that do translate into a legit player. While a lot of lottery and other second-round picks have serious limitations and issues that could hold them back, i.e. like how Dalton is a horrible defender, plus too old to really fix it. I wouldn't say he's too old to fix it quite yet, but I get where you're coming from. I do subscribe to the idea that Bronny has potential to be a very real NBA player, and I wouldn't put it past him to get into a tier where he could be in the conversation for being one of the best players in his draft class, but I would be shocked if he was the best player of his draft. That is quite a stretch. That is quite a ask to get someone to buy into that. Now, it does help that this is one of the worst draft classes that there's been in a very long time, and there's a good chance there won't even be any fucking all-stars coming out of this. But at the bare minimum, there are going to be really good role players to come out of this draft. And is Bronny going to get to the tier, like S-tier role player, like I think maybe a Zachary Reese-Shea could get to, for example? Yeah, I doubt that. I also doubt he eclipses Jared McCain, who is my current pick to be the best player of this draft, unless there's somebody obvious that I'm missing right now, but I'm pretty sure that I'm not. So I agree that Bronny is an NBA player. I have disagreed the whole time with the idea that he did not deserve a spot. At least I didn't feel that way with the same muster or anger that so many people do. And his 17-point game recently, like, yeah, it was in a blowout game, but there are very minimal expectations of a player of his caliber. The irony is that everyone says that that LeBron is placing these expectations onto Bronny, but the only reason that we're talking about Bronny right now is because the media and the fans put those expectations onto Bronny. Not that LeBron didn't contribute, but he's not responsible at large for all the media attention being on LeBron James Jr. I think it's a little bit victim blaming, frankly, to act like the harassment and overabundance of representation of LeBron James on social media and sports talk shows, to act like it's his fault because that horrifying thing exists. It's just ugly to me. It's not good. It's wrong. So still fuck Stephen A. Smith for that. But he's not going to be the best player of his draft. Come on. This is a little too much. From Mick Breeden. I don't know if I like that name, man, but it made me laugh. Flopping should be penalized and stigmatized to the degree that fighting is in the NBA. If you throw your head back as if Iron Mike Tyson fed you a right hand and you hit the deck, that should be challengeable. If they go to the tape and it's clear and obvious you weren't touched, or they grazed your chest, or something you tossed, and these offenses would add up like techs and other X amounts of them in one season, we start doing our fines / suspensions. You really lost the plot at the very end, or I did. I'm not sure what happened, but your overall take that it should be penalized to the degree that fighting is, I don't know if I would go to that extent, but if you simply just make it technical free throws that are worth the value of the shot that they tried to generate. Like, I feel like if you foul bait on a 3, then the opponent should get 3 free throws, and if you foul bait on a 2, they should get 2. But like I said, everyone's largely in the camp of we should get rid of this shit. I also realize I didn't say that, but I prefaced this statement with like I said. But yes, pretty much everybody wants to do something along this line. I think you're taking it to an extreme that I would not, but it's hard to find it disagreeable. From Will Buy Shop, from Will Bishop. That makes more sense. Fuck! All right. Mild take. If MJ or Kobe had done what LBJ did in the Stephen A situation, confront a guy who'd been talking about them between the third and fourth quarter in a game, they look like they're going to lose versus the man's favorite team, go on to hit a 3 in front of him and stare him down and then win the game in OT. If it was MJ or Kobe, this would be a part of their lore. Well, a deep dive that I would like to work on at one point is just the inherent disadvantage that LeBron has experienced in the GOAT debate by still being in the NBA and by having been in the NBA in large part during the age of social media, which has just extradited the level of criticism that he could have ever received in his career. And because of that aspect of things, the other aspect is that stuff that would be discourse that MJ and Kobe did, stuff that would be up for debate, stuff that they would get criticized for more now, is just a cool story. It's just a good thing. It's just like you know the song, the dun 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 dun. You know that one that plays whenever there's an MJ clip or a Kobe clip? Almost all the shit that they do or say in those clips would be controversy, would be discourse, would be picked apart now, but they benefited from being in the right era to avoid just a lot of whiny motherfuckers. From A6897, SGA's flexibility is legitimately insane. I watch replays of his plays and I don't understand how he can get his foot, he can use his foot as a brake and have his ankle touch the floor and not get injured at all. Yeah, if you actually slow down footage of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he is maybe the most flexible NBA player I've ever seen, and probably the most I've ever seen someone use flexibility to their advantage in a way that's like innately obvious. Like, you know, hook shots and floaters were a thing that existed before, but I never saw someone use it to their advantage in a way that was as ever present as Nikola Jokic has. And the way that your flexibility contributing to how you perform as a scorer has always been an aspect of the game, but I have never seen it more obvious than with someone like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Like, he will do a crossover where his knee ends up being an inch from touching the floor, and it doesn't even mean anything to him. He can snap right back up to being in the right position to take a jumper like that. Like, it's actually ridiculous, and when people harp his or lump his game into just being foul baiting, I'm like, there's so many things this guy is doing that has not been done or seen before, and I'm so upset that this is the conversation around him. But yeah, shout out to SGA and yoga. From Justy3418, NBA fans will always find a way to ruin their own happiness. People hating on SGA showed me that a lot of people will choose toxicity over enjoying basketball. Don't get me started about fucking ring culture. Yep, you're pretty much right on the nail. Said exactly what I was going to say, so I agree with you. Said exactly what I just did. From Bruh Moment, people really don't care about teams anymore. They are fans of individual players. Franchises cycle their entire roster in a couple of years, and it makes it difficult to identify with a certain team unless you live in their city. This is hurting the NBA more than the three-point shooting. Yeah, I do think the league culturally, while you could argue it was always superstar-centric, it became more and more and more that over time as these guys went from star athletes to just outright mega celebrities, period, not just within their niche. Like Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, I think, were the first true hit of like superstar is the main focus, this rivalry between these two best players in the league. When you have that being the foundation of your league, going from a pretty successful league to one of the biggest sports leagues in the world, well, then that can be traced back to, you know, it started there. And then we got the MJ era, and then we got the LeBron and Kobe and Steph era, and then now we're like panicking because the next guy up is French and we can't have that. From Precision 8763, we are genuinely watching 4 of the top 15 peaks we have ever seen. Giannis, Jokic, Luka, and SGA are doing things that few, if any, have done statistically. People just don't like change / the new era, so they probably won't admit it. There have been so many amazing all-time great players, and I can understand if people don't put them in that conversation with fair reason. However, they're just too damn good. Wemby can enter this convo too once he gets older and better. Yeah, one of the more frustrating aspects of basketball discourse is you haven't done it till you've done it. Like, you haven't proved anything until you're done to a lot of people. Like, people genuinely debate if something that LeBron did at the age of 39 is going to negatively affect his legacy. And it's just like, brother, no. Who gives a shit? LeBron could shoot 10% from the field and take 20 shots for, 2 more years, and it won't change what LeBron James was for most of his career before it. Someone like Nikola Jokic, so you got to prove it. You got to win that championship before people are ready to admit that you're an all-time great. And the whole time before that, I was blowing the whistle that Nikola Jokic is an all-time great basketball player, and people just do not have proper appreciation for him. And what do you know? He ended up being a championship caliber guy, and now we're ready to have these conversations. SGA is one of the best guards who has ever played the game of basketball, point blank, period. People want to cry about free throws, go for it. But fact of the matter is, he's one of the greatest scorers we've ever seen, and I don't know if his peak is quite top 15 yet. We'll see about that. I don't think there's a strong argument against it necessarily, but people are going to be talking about how great he is after they win a championship, whether it's this year or whatnot. However that ends up going, the conversation will be, wow, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, where does he rank all time? Is he up there? Is he as good as Kobe when you actually think about it? Maybe this guy should be the face of the league. He's going to win so many MVPs now. That shit is going to happen. Same fucking shit happened with Nikola Jokic. Same shit happened with Giannis. So it's very much the prove it culture, and also the lack of understanding that the proving grounds are more difficult than they were before. A championship in the 2020s is more difficult to win than a championship in the 80s or 90s. This is just the reality of the NBA. So, with that in mind, yes, at least 3 of these guys. I mean, Luka also can sometimes be questionable, but his season last year, undeniable. So, like, do I think all 4 of these guys are having top 15 peaks? I think Luka and SGA, they're a little bit more on the borders of that. Again, it's just because they haven't quite proved it. But, you do need... I don't necessarily strongly disagree with having a degree of prove it, but people act like the shit that you're seeing with your own eyes isn't real just because it hasn't happened on the NBA final stage yet, and it's really maddening. Damian Lillard is a top 5 point guard of all time. That is really cute. We're not going to bother getting into that. From Lakota McConnell, Hakeem is far and away the most skilled player ever. Defensive skill is largely under-talked about when bringing up skill. KD, Kyrie, Melo, Luka, Jokic, Magic, etc. aren't in the same stratosphere as Hakeem overall skill-wise. Well, I don't know. It's harder to draw the line in the sand between physicality and just physical attributes versus actual skill on the defensive end, which is the reason why that gets left out of the conversation. It's obvious why a crossover and, not turning the ball over while you do a bunch of fancy handles to get open space, why something like that is obviously skill, where, making the right rotations on defense, anticipating a play, positioning yourself properly for rebounds, stuff like that. It's a skill, but it's not as obvious. So I can agree, on top of the fact that Hakeem is a very, very, very skilled scorer, infamously. I don't know that he is quite the most skilled player ever, because his scoring bag was not as diverse in terms of the types of shots that he took. How he actually got them was different, but I would consider LeBron just a more skilled player because he is also at his peak an all-time great defender. No Hakeem, but still an all-time great defender. All-time great playmaker, and technically, at least in terms of makes, an all-time great three-point shooter. He's already top 10 in made threes, so there's more versatility there. And if we're talking about most skilled, versatility is the number one subject, more so than in any other actual player debate, because versatility is far from my first and foremost most important thing. But yes, he has a very strong case. I just wouldn't agree. From Michael Jorbum, I wonder what this take is about. Michael Jordan's 6-0 argument is stupid. Yes, I get that he never lost in the finals, but to me, all that says is that he had more first-round exits and easier finals competition. People hold it against LeBron for having a losing record in the finals, but to me, being in the finals that much is more impressive than first-round exits, and the much harder finals competition also plays a huge factor in LeBron's losing record. Well, here's the thing about that, Michael Jorbum 23. The first-round exits, there was only one, or maybe it was a second round exit in 1995 when Michael returned after playing 17 regular season games. So he wasn't quite there. He was rusty, if you will. So he wasn't good, not relative, and the team just wasn't quite ready yet for him to be there. And then they were the 95-96 Bulls and won 72 games in response to that. So once the Bulls hit, there was an argument that they only didn't hit again after that because of the bizarre set of circumstances around Michael Jordan's career, not as much the playoff exits. Like, I am not a big believer in the idea that they could have won 8 straight if Michael didn't retire, but I do think they would have won 7 out of 8, and that is still pretty fucking remarkable. And just that stretch, the problem is that it's just about the stretch of years and the also implied dominance that could have been if he was there. He was there. What it looks like is the story is Michael's help was just not good enough earlier in his career, and then it got to a point where it was good enough, and then they just won championship without fail. Like, LeBron making the finals in the 3rd year of his career is cool, but I don't think it's like substantially more meaningful for him than if he just lost in the 1st or 2nd round. Honestly, it's the early years of his career, no true contention expectations, so I don't hold that against him. I don't hold it against him that he lost that series, just like I wouldn't hold it against Mike that he lost to the 86 Boston Celtics. There's so many factors to this. The 6-0 argument, Michael Jordan's finals competition was worse than LeBron's. However, I also think LeBron has only beaten one team in the finals that was on par with the 2 best teams that Michael Jordan beat, which were the 93 Phoenix Suns and the 96 Seattle Supersonics. In 96, Seattle Supersonics actually almost beat the Bulls in the finals. The Bulls went up 3-0, which obviously makes it seem like that would never fucking happen. But the next 2 games, Gary Payton did a kick-ass job defending Michael Jordan, and they won those games. Game 6, I think they lost. I don't think it was that close, but I don't think it was a blowout either, but they lost game 6. The reason that they went down 3-0 is because their head coach, why am I blanking on his name right now? I've dunked on him on Twitter so many times because he's just like a weird grifter now. George Karl, yes. He put Hersey Hawkins, a 6'2 shooting guard who was an offensive-minded player, on Michael Jordan, while he had Gary Payton not play defense on Michael Jordan because he thought that he would be better offensively if he saved his energy for it, just for Gary Payton to play significantly better after Game 3, after being put on Michael Jordan. Because you know what? If you have one of the greatest defensive players to ever play the position, maybe you should use that to your advantage when playing the best player in the world. I don't know. I'm not a head coach like George Karl. Who knows what kind of decision I would have made? Probably the obvious one. Probably that one. From Gavish, this isn't a hot take, but it says do a deep dive on foul baiting. That is the next deep dive we have coming out, and it should be coming out at the very end of March. It's the current running title is Ethical Hoopers versus Free Throw Merchants. We're going to dive into what people even mean by that and why it is largely a bullshit narrative that does have some founding to it, but it's a very overblown thing that people who just want to hate on the game of basketball constantly love to bring up, but won't give you the whole spiel. Just check out the video when it comes out. From Legit Marbles, the ball handling / dribble skill revolution is the most significant and impactful skill revolution in the history of the game, even more than 3-point shooting. Without the ability to handle and move the ball the way that players are able to today, the 3-point revolution wouldn't have even been possible. The entire game would be fundamentally different if they still called carries like they used to, and there weren't any gather step rules. Ball handling is probably the most important part to every offense that exists today. Removing the 3-point line would have less of an impact on teams' play styles than strictly enforcing the carrying and travel rules like the 60. Well, if you took away the 3-point line, it would be weird, but it wouldn't change how the players functionally do their moves by any means. However, if you changed it to the carry and travel rules of the earlier eras, then yeah, it would be a fucking nightmare. These guys would be getting a carry and a travel damn near every possession. That was the large thing that stood out to me back when I was I'm going to do a little Rusty Buckets video talking about this, but I watched the 1984 finals in full, and the thing that stood out, man, there might have been a travel or carry called every 2 minutes. Like, truly such a frequent occurrence. And I think that's just the concept of dribbling a basketball, having the rules of it so tightly wound, was ultimately to the detriment of the game, even if it does ultimately have more of a fairness to it. Fairness is not always necessarily what is best for the sport. And at large, I think the shit that you can get away with, yeah, does it push a line? Giannis had that carry the other day. Jordan Poole infamously has a bunch of really bad carries to his name. Like, yeah, it's not good when it reaches that extreme. At large, I am much prefer a league where they don't blow their whistle every time anything resembling a travel happens. And as long as that is universally applied, as long as that is applied without bias for one team or player in particular, then I think it's all good. Now, obviously, it does not exist in such a pure state. It would be really great if it did, but I can't say that I want those old rules back. I really can't. The way that people dribble now, you're right, it is night and day, because the other thing that stood out is just like how mechanically, how robotic, how not smooth anybody dribbling. Even Magic Johnson, who was the most prolific ball handler of his era, ugly ass looking dribbles. Like efficient, effective for the body type that he had for the era he was in, but Jesus Christ. If Magic Johnson just teleported in the NBA right now, and the highlights of the way that he lifts his shoulders up, he like waddles like a penguin while he dribbles the ball, he would get clowned on for that shit. But it was because of the rules. It was because of what they could do. You can't put your hand on the side of the ball. It makes it substantially harder to manipulate it and move it in different directions. You have to keep it here and like only slight adjustments beyond that, or you have to pick the ball up. Yeah, you're cooked, and I just think basketball's better without that. I don't want 50 calls every single minute. And the last take of the video from Poke Bag. This is something that a lot of people have asked me to address. I don't care how good Josh Giddey is. He could have a 90-point game or average a quadruple-double during the season. I still want him out of my Bulls. Well, I suspect the off-the-court issue with Josh Giddey is a big factor in this for you, and that is entirely justified if you want to feel that way. For me, just looking at him strictly as a basketball player, he's been very good lately. Objectively, he's been playing really good basketball, but I too agree. I don't care how good he is in this ultimately not super meaningful basketball, in this ultimately not super meaningful role in the scale of the NBA world at large. I'm still very confident that Josh Giddey would be a terrible performer in the playoffs as he was last year, and he's the perfect type of player in the regular season to rack up pretty damn good numbers. Like, if we take a look at what his averages have been with the Chicago Bulls, he's at 14 points per game, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, 1 steal. Guess what? He averaged 16 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 steal while he was on the OKC Thunder. Now, he did shoot 5% worse from 3, but he shot better from 2, slightly worse from the free throw line, slightly higher free throw volume. But like, there's no doubt that Josh Giddey can put up pretty good numbers in the regular season. In fact, look at this shit. His career averages are virtually what he's putting up in Chicago. Now, his recent stretch has been a big catalyst in this discussion because he was not particularly good to open the year. But let's just start from here. Over his last 31 games, he's averaging 16 points, 8 rebounds, 6.6 assists, 1 steal. So it's not even that much fucking better. He's just had a good 3-point shot lately. And I will remind you, there is a significant difference between being a good 3-point shooter and being a shooter that defenses leave wide open and you shoot a decent percentage on those wide open shots. Better to do that than not, but if the defense has zero respect for you as a shooter and an open 3 is available to you constantly, if you launch that wide open 3 4 times a game and you hit it 37% of the time, that's cool, but it's not great. You're nowhere near being a good shooter yet at that point in this version of the NBA. And his handle, don't like how he does that. I don't like his driving to the rim. I'm curious actually what his rim efficiency is this year. Maybe this is a metric where we'll see some actual improvement. Percentage at the rim, nope. 8% dip from his career average. He's also significantly worse on mid-range shots and floater range. Well, this year he's better on floater range shots, but mid-range shots, worse 10 to 16 foot percentage of his career, worst 16 to the 3-point line. So mid-range game, that's about 10% of his shots, not super high volume, but it is bad. The floater range shot for him, 48%, is creeping towards being pretty good, like actually a valuable shot, but not excellent by any means, still less than a point per possession. And he still has an overwhelming number of his threes assisted. He's not an off the dribble pull-up threat at all. He's a big guard who handles it okay, and he's a pretty good playmaker. But I am telling you right now, this guy should not be making $30 million. He will not be a good player for that value at the very least, and I really do not think he should get that much credit for being the best player on a fucking 30-40 team. I recognize that makes you a play-in team in the Eastern Conference, but in the current Western Conference, that win percentage of 43% would have you worse than the fucking 13th seeded San Antonio Spurs. So you know what, man? I don't particularly care about how he's played lately. It's not going to change my mind unless he does things that I didn't think he could do. I absolutely thought Josh Giddey could put up 16, 7, and 7. I absolutely thought he could shoot 38% on completely wide open all the time three-pointer. You know, that's very, very believable. It does not shock me. And the fact that his volume and stats increased with more opportunity and people are acting like that means he just got substantially better, it actually kind of baffles me. So, you know, I've been a Josh Giddey hater before, and I have not seen enough to change that. Have I seen enough to say that he does belong in the NBA, at least in terms of having the talent to be there? Yeah. I wouldn't say that he's a guy who has no value anymore in the way that I did, but investing $30+ million a year to have Josh Giddey be one of, if not your franchise player, I can't think of a more quintessentially Chicago Bulls post-Michael Jordan thing to do than that. So because of that, I'm all but certain that's what's gonna fucking happen. And I'm not happy about it. Hey, this is the hell I've signed up for. Hopefully the Seattle Supersonics are around the corner, because I really could not be more dejected and uninterested in the Chicago Bulls than I have been this year. Even when I've been hearing a lot of good things about how they played recently, I've watched a game or two because I'm like, yeah, if my team's had a good game and people saying they're playing good, that's cool. But I don't care about almost anybody on this fucking roster anymore. Almost everybody I already know, other than Josh Giddey, unfortunately. Io DeSumo, maybe Pat Williams. Otherwise, everybody on this fucking team's going to be gone real soon. Real soon. So I can't get invested in them. I don't care. I don't care that they win fucking 42% of their games. Who gives a shit? Why would I watch that? I'm good. And I really just, God, I don't fucking want Josh Giddey on my team.